Adik-adik, saya mau cerita ya. Saya lahir tahun 51. Ya. Kita baru 1 tahun merdeka. Ya.
6 tahun.
Ya. Maaf. Proklamasi tahun 45, tapi penyerahan kedaulatan baru tahun 50. Ya. 49.
Have you ever pondered how the lush, sprawling archipelago of Indonesia came under the yoke of colonial rule? How a land so rich in culture and resources fell prey to foreign powers? Today, we delve into the turbulent yet fascinating history of colonialism in Indonesia. The story begins in the early 16th century with the arrival of the Portuguese. Lured by the scent of spices, these early European explorers established trading posts and forts, marking the beginning of foreign influence in Indonesia. However, the Portuguese reign was not to last, as the Dutch swiftly entered the scene. The Dutch East India Company, or VOC, came into power in the early 17th century. Their dominance was marked by a system of monopoly and exploitation. The VOC implemented the Kulturstelsel, or cultivation system, which forced locals to grow cash crops instead of their staple food, rice. This led to widespread famine and hardship among the Indonesian people. However, the VOC's rule was not unchallenged. Indigenous resistance, notably Prince Diponegoro's Java War in the early 19th century, showed the resilience of the Indonesian people. Yet, despite these rebellions, Dutch control remained firm. By the late 19th century, the VOC was dissolved, and the Dutch government took direct control. This era, known as the Dutch ethical policy, saw some improvements, such as the introduction of education and infrastructure. But beneath these reforms, the harsh reality of colonial rule persisted. The winds of change started to blow during the early 20th century. Inspired by nationalist movements worldwide, Indonesian intellectuals like Sukarno and Hatta began to demand independence. The Japanese occupation during World War II, although brutal, further fueled this desire for freedom. Finally, on the 17th of August 1945, Indonesia declared its independence. It was a momentous occasion, but it did not mark the end of the struggle. The Dutch launched police actions to reclaim their former colony, leading to 4 years of bitter conflict. Yet, the Indonesian people stood firm, and by late 1949, Dutch recognition of Indonesian sovereignty was inevitable. To recap, the history of colonialism in Indonesia is a tale of foreign exploitation, indigenous resistance, and eventual liberation. It began with the arrival of the Portuguese, followed by the oppressive reign of the Dutch East India Company. Despite the hardships, the Indonesian people never lost their spirit of resistance, culminating in their hard-fought independence in the mid-20th century.